How do I look? Oh, God. I had to adjust the headset. I was like, was Paul in this thing? What small head was in this thing? You know?
All right, I guess we're live, man. Back in full action. Cheers it up.
Hell yeah, man. Come on now. Happy. Oh, I guess you don't want me to give the date, do you?
No, yeah.
Oh.
We're doing this 4th of July.
4th of July. Here's the first beer of the day. I'll send my last one on Twitter so you can see. There's going to be quite a few consumed today, Mike.
Yeah, so we did this 1 year ago. Video debut for Cousin Shane.
Yeah.
It's been a whirlwind ever since. You complain every day, damn, I got to set up the camera,
God.
I got to send you the files.
You know, I do miss, I joke about it. I miss the old days when you know, I used to smoke. Terrible habit. If you're doing it, quit. You know, it's terrible. And I'm just saying that because I don't like smoking now, you know. It's like, it's kind of funny when you quit smoking and then you smell it. You're like, oh, look at these gross people, you know, even though I did it for 10 freaking years. But I used to miss, I'd sit out there in the gazebo, I'd smoke cigarettes, you know, sometimes shirtless. Can't get away with that anymore, you know. We get pulled off the YouTube or something. But I used to sit out there. We used to pod, and then I'd have to pause for a minute. Trains coming through, or the dogs are barking, and I'm trying to figure out, you know. And it's funny because we were doing it for like 50 listeners at the time, you know. And it's just kind of cool how it's grown. It's kind of crazy how quickly it's grown, and now it's. I don't want to call it a job, but it's like a part-time gig, and now I'm doing cameras. Like, I'm checking my teeth. Like, I'm brushing my teeth. I'm like, not got any bats in the cave, you know. I'm doing all this stuff before I get on the air, and I'm like, yeah, I just kind of miss the old days. You mean you just jumping on there talking for 30 minutes, and then if you didn't want to do it, you're like, hell, we'll do it tomorrow. You know?
Yeah, but we've come a long way. But, you know, I just wanted to celebrate that 1 year anniversary.
Yeah.
That was before we were scared to death about what happened at Media Days. And we did so well, they said, hell, next year we'll bring Media Days to them.
Yeah.
Coming to Nashville, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, we got to get the word out. Bearded Irish, July 15th, 3 to 6 p.m. Central Time. Come hang out. We're calling it that SEC Media's tailgate.
Yeah.
Pre-game, whatever we want to
I was
call
going
it.
to call it family reunion with the cousins, but Mike thought that may confuse a few people. So I get that. Mike, I think this is going to be awesome. I'm really pumped up about this. There may be 2 people show up. There may be 100 people show up. I don't know. But I know 3 people will be there, me, you, and Flying Hawaiian. And we're going to be drinking cold beers. We're going to be talking about the pod. We're going to be talking about football and just cutting up. Now, you know, a lot of times we got these little interviews that we're doing 60 minutes, and it's got to be pressed and ready to go. You know, it'd be nice just to kind of chill for a minute and just talk to a lot of loyal listeners, Mike. That's the main reason we're doing it, because some of these guys that were retweeting us on day one are still retweeting us 5 years later, you know, and that's what I want to give back. I just want to just thank them, you know. So first 5 that show up, I'm gonna get a beer on me. So I got the first 5 that show up. I'll buy you a beer. I don't know if that's legal, but we'll make it. We'll make you sign something when you get in there.
Yeah. So I can't wait for that. Can't wait for Media Days, but. You know, anytime I get together with you, it's special. So, not just because I love you, but because of these, man. One of our favorite shows that we do every year, we get the most heat for it. Well, I do.
Yeah.
Not
me.
We always say, not Cousin Shane. This is not Shane's list.
That's right.
I won't even tag you on it, but somehow you'll get tagged
I'll get brought in. Come get your boy. That's usually the comment I get all the time. You know, I'm like, what did he do to Kentucky today? You know.
Well, I'm about to make everyone else mad, and I don't even intend to do it, Shane, because I'm ready to do my quarterback rankings for the coming season.
Yeah.
And I have to say, as always, because people how can you have this guy ahead of that guy, this guy, that guy? This is my attempt, Shane, to project where the rankings will be at the end of the season, not entering the season. So there's a little bit of a projection. There's you know, you have to factor in their teammates and their coaches and everything like that. I don't really factor in the schedule because I don't think a schedule really affects a quarterback. But really what I'm just saying, December 1st, what order would you draft the SEC quarterbacks if you
Okay.
had an opportunity. Does that make sense?
It does, and I want to put a little asterisk by that because you're not saying statistically best quarterback because, you're going to get your Will Rogers lovers. You're going to get,
Right.
your Joe Milton lovers that are, they're going to be more of an air raid. But if all 14 of these guys were getting drafted tomorrow, what is the order the NFL would select them? Is that kind of –
Well, maybe not NFL, but maybe more like if you had a college football game to win, let's say the SEC championship.
Okay.
Which quarterback is going to give you the best chance to get that W on Saturday?
Okay. All right. I dig that.
That makes sense to you?
Makes perfect sense. It won't online because people won't listen to this, and then they're going to be like, oh, this freaking idiot,
Yep,
But,
yep.
yes, I see what you're saying. So, game's on the line. You go to the locker room. You got 14 quarterbacks. Which one you suiting up? I like that.
Right. And it's a little bit more difficult because we don't know. Obviously, we never know this time of year, 4th of July, all the starters. So there's some projection here. Not all these guys have been named starting quarterback, but I assume they will be. Either they will be or I think they'll play the most for their team this fall. Does that make sense?
Wait, say that one more time.
Well, there's a couple teams. We don't know who the starter is.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess I'm kind of projecting either the names here will either be the starters or they'll be the guys that play the most for their team.
Yeah.
Like
No, that makes
like
sense.
Alabama, I had to go with somebody.
Yeah.
I could be dead wrong.
Yeah.
But this is the quarterback I think will play the most for Alabama is the guy that I'm
I get that.
mentioning on my
it's,
list.
it's funny that you say that because if you listen to the last quarterback ones, some of those guys didn't even play. So, no, I get you. It's a little bit tough to do it right now in July.
Right.
But you're just giving it your best shot. So that's all we can ask for, Mike. It's like your dad says.
All right, number 14, and this is where, people get tuned off immediately. How could you have my guy 14th?
Yeah.
Graham Mertz, Florida.
Okay.
And I also say this every year, and people don't believe me, but it speaks to the depth at the quarterback position in the SEC. He was a 5-star recruit, never quite lived up to the billing at Wisconsin. Now he's at Florida. 59% passer, that's not bad. 5,400 yards, 38 touchdowns, 26 interceptions. But why is he last on my list, Shane? First year in the SEC. First year in Billy Napier's offense. 4 of 5 offensive linemen are new starters for the Florida Gators. So I think there's going to be some struggle there. If Florida does well, it's going to be because of their running game.
Yeah.
Now, Graham Mertz, maybe play action. Maybe he feeds off that and he has a great year. But I'm not really ready to go that far. And just the fact that, say what you want about Anthony Richardson. He did go number 4 in the NFL draft. He was very, very inconsistent. So is that Anthony Richardson or is that Billy Napier? Probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
But how can I rightfully, Shane, sit here and look at a guy that just went number 4 overall and his coach and the program didn't get the most out of him? Am I to believe they're going to do that with Graham Mertz, who we know? I mean, he may be the breakout star in the SEC. He's not going number 4 overall in the next draft. So
Right.
he's not on the same tier talent-wise as Anthony Richardson. Maybe he's more consistent, and I think that's the hope you got to have if you're Florida Gators. Is we may not have a guy that could take over the football game and beat a Utah or a South Carolina or nearly came back and beat Tennessee, but maybe we just have a steady Eddie that doesn't have a Kentucky performance, things of that nature. So that's the hope, but right now I got Graham Mertz dead last. Any issues with that?
Well, I mean, not from you, Mike, because we know you hate the Florida Gators, so I kind of expected this right out of the gate, the people are asking, we haven't even done their team previews or anything. He's going on Paul Feinbaum saying Billy's the F-ranked coach, I did want to ask you real quick before we jump into quarterback here. That appearance that you had, obviously threw my ass under the bus, which that's okay. I get that, Mike. I knew it was coming. In fact, I would have been tweeting if he'd have said, hey, Shane's jumping on tomorrow. I'm like, what the, Mike? A little heads up. But I did want to ask you on that coaching, if you could go back, because this shit's been dragged through the mud, especially Kentucky fans. Would you change any of those? Is there any that you're like, now that you've had a little bit, because that was that was impromptu. And
yeah, that's the thing. I never know what Paul's going to ask me.
Yeah.
Literally never do they say, all right, let's talk ABC, nothing. They say, hey, can you come on at 3? It doesn't matter what I'm doing. Yes, I will be there. That's how it goes. I had no idea. I think he just said that just because that's how we started the conversation. I said
Yeah.
I graded Mark Stoops and So I guess he was just curious to see what I had to say about the rest. But
Did you give Billy an F? Would you really give? I mean, because I'll say what you want. Coaching is a lot of things.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest parts isn't actually, in my opinion, and I know everybody's got their own opinion, but is getting the talent there. And it's hard not to acknowledge just the fire that they got down there right now with this recruiting. We've got stadium renovations coming up. I mean, there's a whole bunch of good stuff happening down there in Gainesville. So I want to factor some of that in. So would you change that score at all?
Well, I mean, specifically that one, I was having fun. You know what I mean? I mean, Billy Napier's not the worst coach in the SEC, but he did a pretty piss-poor job last year, if you ask me, at the end. I mean, losing to Vanderbilt. I mean, that Kentucky game was awful.
Yeah.
I thought some of his decisions to go for it cost him in the Tennessee game. I mean, there's things to critique. But, yeah, I mean, I'm in wait-and-see mode with Billy.
Yeah.
I really am. And this year, many people are saying that's the toughest schedule in the country.
Right.
The following year, Shane, they get 11 Power 5 teams are on their schedule.
I saw that.
I mean, this is –
it's not getting easier.
No.
Yeah.
So I think I can give him a better grade because I'll be perfectly honest. I know he had a great record at Louisiana.
Yeah.
I don't watch Louisiana football.
No.
So I don't know how to grade that.
Neither does these Florida fans, But they're going to ride and die with their coach. I get that,
right.
I watched zero UCF, with Heupel, and then now I'm like his biggest fan,
Right. So no, he's not an F. That would make him he's probably, to me, he's probably like B minus C.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
I think he's a good coach. Yeah, I just think they haven't had an opportunity, but again, just getting the talent to the field, I think that's a big part of it, and so he's got a higher ceiling, I think. But back to quarterback, I wanted to ask you.
Wait, one more thing, last thing, because sometimes I get this a lot. People say, "My God, you go full tilt on Feinbaum." Well, that's the point. I think that's why he's had me on. If I just sat here and it was just, I said nothing funny. I mean, basically that's what I take it as. I'm trying to make him laugh.
Exactly.
And trying to bring information. I mean, it's not like I'm just saying crazy stuff, but I'm trying to make him laugh. I'm trying to get his audience fired up because they talk about me for days on end.
Yeah.
And then they want to have me back. I mean, that's kind of the whole point there. But
well, hell, Mike, that's why you have me on, So
right,
it's like football is serious. I get that. There's a serious side of it, and when a game's on the line or a rivalry's on the line, there's families that divide because of college football. So there's a serious side of it, but for me, college football is also fun, man. Drinking cold beer with your buddies and family and creating some of those memories. I'll never forget our Ole Miss game, That was the longest fucking walk to the truck I've ever had in my life. And I'm like, why did you go out of bounds, that entire time? So I get it. It's serious, it's funny, but it creates memories. And I think sometimes that gets lost in media. It's just so archaic and black and white. Nah, let's have some fun. But let's get the news out there too. So I love your Paul Feinbaum experience. It's one of my highlights. I can't wait to see who he pisses off. Because I usually tell, even if I don't watch the show, and all of a sudden South Carolina's blowing up my Twitter feed, I'm like, damn, what did he say about Shane? But okay, back to the quarterbacks. I want to ask you if we took him out of Gainesville. Because one of the things that I think when you factor in how good a quarterback's going to be, sometimes it gets lost. I mean, you mentioned the linemen and stuff like that, but in the scenario when we're going to a locker room and we're picking 14 quarterbacks, it doesn't matter what the roster is going to be. But if I took him and I put him in, let's say, College Station, would you still have him at 14, you think? Or do you think –
I'd probably move him up.
Yeah. You got just better talent around you as far as wide receivers and more of experienced offensive line. So that may be a factor there. So you would, so he's got a higher ceiling. It's not like he's just 14th forever.
Right.
Like he's one of those guys that you could see being what do you think his ceiling could be down there in Florida? Let's just say stars align, and we've not done our preview for the game.
That's an interesting question because I don't know that he's got great receivers either.
Right.
I mean, he's got a couple quality ones, but he came from an offense at Wisconsin where they love to run the ball. That's what they do. They run the ball. That takes pressure off the quarterback, and he couldn't get it done there. And this is not one of these situations where a guy did so well at a lower level, and now he's coming up to the SEC.
Yeah.
I hear they wanted him back, so it's not like he was god-awful. But again, if you're taking a struggling Wisconsin quarterback and he's going to be the savior of the program, that says something about your program, in my mind.
Okay.
And just watching them in the spring game, I mean, that was one of the worst spring games I've ever seen in my life. Now, linemen were out, and apparently the defense and all that. I mean, there's always excuses when the guy's awful. I didn't know the defense was going to be blitzing. Like, that's what defense is going to do in the SEC. They're going to light your ass up, You got to respond to it. So, his ceiling, man, I don't know. That's a tough one. Because I don't like an average SEC quarterback, I think.
Yeah, second tier somewhere around there.
Right.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike, and I think I'm more hesitant to rank him just because I don't know him,
right?
And honestly, I don't know this Florida team that well either,
right?
To come out here and say I know exactly what Billy's going to be putting on this field week 2, I have no clue, and I know that they'll have a pretty good defense. I know they'll have a hell of a running game,
right?
But past that, there's a lot of question marks, and the big one is quarterback play. So I think
that factors into my thinking, because if I was sitting here, we'll get to my picks in a little while, but if I was sitting here saying Florida's going to shock everybody, they're going to win the East, I certainly wouldn't be saying the quarterback's that's illogical.
We may be walking away from this Utah game and like, everybody's saving this now, like Mike's such a dumbass.
All right, number 13, Shane, we love this guy, showed great promise last year, A.J. Swan from Vanderbilt. 1,274 passing yards, 10 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions last season as a true freshman. He's got Will Shepard. He's got Jalen McGowan, 2 great receivers. They're bringing back 5 offensive linemen with starting experience. However, Shane, against Power 5 teams, 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. Yeah. So, again, true freshman, Vanderbilt, that's somewhat to be expected. But I think his numbers are a little inflated against poorer teams, defenses, and everything. But again, I'll continue to say it, man. If A.J. Swan's the 13th best quarterback in this conference, we've got a hell of a conference of quarterbacks, and I think we do. Because I don't think they're not losing games because of A.J. Swan. If they were winning games, it's because of him.
Right.
And this is another one where, again, I said he's got talent around him.
Yeah.
But his star running back's now at Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know how much help he's going to get.
No, I get that, and I love A.J. Swan. You know that, and I just think he is an SEC quarterback. A lot of times Vanderbilt have these guys, and they start flip-flopping them around, and they're just trying to orchestrate some sort of offense production. And when I watch Swan, I'm like, man, this guy could be playing somewhere else in the SEC. So I think he's very talented. Health is the biggest concern. Maybe put some more. I mean, he was a freshman, so maybe put some more weight on, a little bit stronger this year. I think if we can get a full season from Swan, I think he's one of those guys that moves quickly up this list. And he does that with receiver plays, because I think, Vanderbilt, they had some games last year that they were able to stick close and then take advantage of a Mike Wright run or or a Ray Davis run or something like that. Just keep it within striking distance. I don't think you're going to have that luxury this year. I think you're going to have to put some points up, and I think that's going to be with Swan. So I think he should be a little higher on your list. But again, that shows, because a lot of people are saying this is a down year for quarterbacks in the SEC. I think you're crazy.
Yeah.
I think when you look across all 14 of these, you can make an argument almost all of them is going to play in the NFL at some level. Right. So I'm that's crazy to have him at 13, and then I'm curious how the rest of this list goes.
All right, number 12 on my list, Peyton Thorne, Auburn, transfer from Michigan State. And this is another one, Shane, where it's not because I think he's a bad player, but it's just so hard for me to peg what Auburn's going to be with a new coaching staff, with essentially a new starting entire offense with all the transfers. So I think he could be a really good player, Shane. He reminds me of Bo Wallace.
Yeah.
Remember, he played for Hugh Freeze, who was very productive. He's one of the quarterbacks that beat Alabama. So I'm not saying you can't win with Peyton Thorne. I think you can. They won 11 games 2 years ago. Now, last year, different story, but I think the team was not as good. But over 6,000 passing yards, 49 touchdowns, 24 picks at Michigan State. Mm-hmm. But I did look at it this way too, Shane. This kind of against Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, which I think that's probably as close as he's going to get to facing SEC defenses in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. So against the big three there, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So
Yeah.
kind of middle of the road. I don't know. Again, he is just hard for me to peg, considering I've just watched a couple. I haven't watched all his games, but I've watched as much as I could. And again, Auburn.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're going to have – they got some transfers they like at receiver, a transfer at tight end, 4 or 5 transfer offensive linemen. How are all these pieces going to come together? I think that's difficult to be successful all year.
Yeah.
They're the team we're looking at, and we haven't done their team preview yet, but I think it's going to be shaky in the middle, and then if it all comes together the second half, they're going to go on a run.
Right. Well, and I think Auburn fans are going to be a little biased right now, and because you got that high going on. I don't know.
Right.
There's just that natural buzz when you get a new coach in there, and then you're always thinking positive, best case scenario. Hey, what happened last year is gone. We're done with that system. We got us a quarterback coach, and say what you want. Hugh Freeze has always found ways to get the most out of these quarterbacks. So I can see why you'd get a little hate on this one, just because that just natural. Everybody does this, They're going to say, hey, we got this guy, we got this guy. We pair them together. It's perfect. We got these guys coming in, So you're imagining, because you don't know. You don't know what your football team's going to look like.
Right.
So when you don't know, you're imagining the best case scenario. And the best case scenarios is that the stars align and that you're beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl. That's
Right.
just kind of where I think Auburn fans are. It was a natural buzz when they got Thorne, I saw Cole tweeting out on it, every rose has its thorn, it's like this is exactly what Auburn wanted. So yeah, because of that, it's hard for me not to think that he should be higher up this list, just because you got the Hugh factor there.
Right. Well, and this may not be a perfect comparison, but the way I kind of look at him is how I look at Hendon Hooker under Josh Heupel and Matt Corral under Lane Kiffin. Because those are the style. That's virtually the system they want to run at Auburn now. That former Baylor system, bringing in transfer. Well, Matt Corral wasn't a transfer, but he was there under a different system. And by the end of year 1, Hendon Hooker and Matt Corral were good players.
Yeah.
By year 2, they were elite.
Yeah.
I think that's what you got to be hoping for with Peyton Thorne. Year 2,
Yeah.
it's just so hard to come in, all new scheme, new players, new coaches, and everything clicks right away. It's just going to take time, I think.
Right. And they don't want to hear that, but yes, I'm agreeing.
And that doesn't mean you're bad year 1.
Yeah.
It just means you may not be a Heisman contender year 1.
Well, that's
what
I think happens in Auburn. I think there's a handful of games where we get a glimpse of what the future of this program is going to look like, and it may be an upset. Like you mentioned, Ole Miss. Hell, nobody's predicting Auburn to beat Ole Miss, but we wouldn't be surprised if it happened. You know what I'm saying? Because
right.
I think there'll be a handful of these games you're like, this is why we brought Hugh Freeze in. This is why he brought Peyton Thorne in,
Mm-hmm. All right, so next on my list, I kind of teased this one on the drive down here. Got a ton of hate, Shade. Number 11, Brady Cook, Missouri. And he's a tough one because we don't even know if he's going to be the starting quarterback. We really don't. So have him this high up the list should give you some indication of the respect I have for him. But he was banged up last year. We got to be fair to him.
Yeah.
Very underrated runner. I thought he played better at the tail end of last season. If he plays like he did at just the tail end, he's probably moving up this list.
Yeah.
If he plays like he did at the start of the season, he's probably moving down the list. So he's a tough one for me to peg. They're in a new offensive system. He lost his star receiver, Dominic Lovett. We're hoping Luther Burden takes that jump and maybe negates that, but again, we never know. I think at Missouri, the offensive line and particularly the running back room is kind of a concern, if I'm being fair. Because we're not talking 6-6 anymore. We're trying to go 8-4, 9-3. Do we have the O-line? Do we have the running backs to get there? I don't know. I'm not saying we don't, but I don't know. And if you don't got great offensive line and you don't have help at running back, it's obviously not going to do great for the quarterback. So all those factors, that's why I've got Brady Cook, number 11 right now, fair or not.
Well, this is why this is Mike's list, Mizzou Nation. All right? You know who's got your back, this guy. And, yes, the defense is going to keep you in a lot of games, but it's going to be Brady Cook that ends up winning it for you.
Okay.
I think I'm a little higher on him just because of his athletic ability. The play.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, when the shit gets real and the play breaks down, you're going to have some legs, and I think that's what he provides, something he wasn't able to do as much banged up last year. I think he's able to cap capitalize here. I think Luther takes that big step forward. I think they got to. I mean, naturally, you got to get this kid involved in everything. Kind of like I joke like Debo in the NFL. You know, if you got to put him back at running back, it doesn't matter. Just make sure he's got the ball. And I think when they do that, that's going to open up that offense a little bit more. I think Brady's got a lot against him. It kind of reminds me of Bennett, you know, if you're talking about Georgia, you know. He's not the guy. Everybody's talking about Sam and what's the future of the Mizzou Nation going to look like. But he keeps winning the job, and I think that's what's going to happen here. So when you win the job over and over, you win this locker room, and I think that shows you a little bit more about what kind of quarterback they got there. So I'm a little higher on him, not crazy high. I'm not saying he's top 5 or anything like that. I saw a tweet floating around comparing KJ Jefferson. I'd love to give that kid a shout out. That's clever, but a screenshot between that game is not saying who's a better quarterback here. But if I'm telling you, if Missouri is going to take that next step, it's going to have to be with – you cannot have the whole team looking over your shoulder wondering when's the next guy coming in. And to put those naysayers away, come out here, put some points on the board. So I'm a little higher on him than you, but not crazy high, like I said.
So number 10 on my list, this was difficult, Shane, and this was a factor of not knowing who the starting quarterback is, so there's a little bit of lack of confidence because it could be someone else. But also, I put him this high because of the talent surrounding him. Whoever this quarterback is probably going to be higher on this list. But again, I just don't know who it's going to be. Alabama, I went with Jalen Milroe, number 10. We liked him coming out of the spring. Started against A&M, 12 of 19, 111 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, but threw a really bad pick and lost 2 fumbles. He's an elite runner. They should have a solid ground game to take pressure off him. But not knowing if he's going to be the starter or not, I like the weapons they have down there. Again, they don't have, maybe top 10 draft pick receivers like they usually do.
Yeah.
But they got 4 or 5 guys you can win with at a high level in the SEC. So he's got weapons. Could be Ty Simpson. I don't think it's going to be the Buckner from Notre Dame. I mean, he's not good. He's just not good at all. So give me Jalen Milroe. I think he has a little bit of that edge. Thoughts on Jalen Milroe, number 10?
I like it because, again, kind of the same argument I made with Mizzou there. I just think athletic ability, we got to see it during the Arkansas game.
Yeah.
We got to see a little bit of it during the Texas A&M game. Obviously, there was a lot of things happening in that A&M matchup, but I think you learn from that, man. I mean, nobody comes out and just takes over the reins. That's a lot of pressure coming out and being Alabama's number 1 quarterback, especially when you're behind the first, future first-round pick here, it's first pick. So, no, I think there's a lot of pressure there, and sorry, man, these beers are catching up to me already. I probably should slow down.
It's a holiday.
Yeah, it's a holiday. I like the way it's like my big orange walk, man. I'm gonna be fucking drunk later. So, but at any rate, Mike, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's tough to kind of gauge who the quarterback's going to be because as soon as we say this, Tyler comes. It's just it could happen that way, but. When you look at Alabama's roster, they're loaded, man. They got a great line, big line. They got a stable of running backs that can compete with anybody in the country. And, yes, maybe not current first picks on wide receivers, but they're on there. There's some young ones that I think emerge this year on this roster, and you're like, okay, there's the next first round pick. So Alabama's kind of a wild card for me, and a lot of that has to do with quarterback play. So, but you got an Alabama roster. So I mean, you take Swan and you put him on Alabama, all of a sudden he's shooting up the list, and he's the 5th best quarterback in the league. So
that's a great point.
I'm with you here. I'll stick in this point just because say what you want, he still managed to get 2 wins last year.
Now here's where I'm going to lose a lot of fans here, Shane. I probably will gain some or other SEC fan bases. I'm going to look at your face as I say this. Number 9, quarterback in the SEC, Spencer Rattler. Listen to this, Shane. Yards per attempt have declined 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Touchdown to interception ratio declined 2 years in a row. First season under offensive coordinator Dal Loggins, who there's literally an article. I don't know. I don't watch NFL like I used to. they called him the worst coordinator I think in history or something crazy like that. The O-line's questionable. They got 2 scholarship running backs.
Mm-hmm.
They do have Juice Wells. I think he's the best receiver in the SEC. If he can just throw it to Juice Wells, maybe they'll be great. But beyond that, I don't know what we're rating them on. I think South Carolina also got maybe the second, third hardest schedule in the country. So I don't know, man. I mean, at some point you are what we've seen, and what we've seen from him is inconsistent. Now, again, doesn't mean he's garbage. It just means he could Tennessee you and be incredible. Clemson, incredible. He didn't do it the following game against Notre Dame with more time. I mean, I just don't know what to make of him.
Yeah.
He could be number 1 on this list. I don't think he could be much lower than number 9. But 10, 11, I wouldn't be stunned either. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know what to make of the guy. So I'm putting him number 9.
SEC Mike, that's his list, not Big Orange Balls. I did not do this because I still have nightmares of Spencer Rattler. And I don't have nightmares about what rank are we? 11th?
Number 9.
Number 9? Even, not much better. But still, I have nightmares of a 9th-ranked quarterback in the SEC. And yes, I get the inconsistency. I get that. I mean, the ups and downs. But what South Carolina – I'm telling you right now, Mike, the reason they're going to be so upset on this list is because how did the season end? Spencer looked like a damn NFL first-round pick against Tennessee.
Yep.
Spencer looked like a second-round pick against Clemson. Did the bowl game go well? Maybe. I mean, a lot better than it did in Florida. So I think maybe as a Gamecock fan, you'd be saying, hey, he figured it out, And going into this season, now you got, like I said, Juice Wells, probably an early first-rounder right there, super talented wide receiver. If we could just get him the rock, how can we not be as productive as last year? I'm kind of leaning that way just because I have those nightmares, those thoughts of him just killing us,
Right.
So maybe I'm a little bit biased there. I'm going to have him a little higher, but I do think the inconsistency. Kind of going back how this started, Mike. You're going to the locker room. You're in an SEC championship. Your back's against the wall. Are you picking him? Or are you picking someone else? I think maybe that's the argument you're going to make here is because of that inconsistency last season is why you wouldn't select him earlier.
Yeah. Well, he can go out there and make plays that literally no one else can make.
Yeah.
I mean, he can be incredible. And then he can go out there and just look awful against Florida.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell? And Florida's not even that good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So just up and down, up and down.
And their schedule ramps up pretty quick this year.
Right out the gate.
Yeah.
He's going to be compared to Drake May.
And I think, that's what's going to happen.
What happens if they lose to Carolina, which they probably won't, but let's just, for this scenario, lose to them. Georgia week 3, on the road, lose to them. Tennessee week 5, lose to them. And, Mississippi State wedged in there. I mean, if you start dropping games, are they going to start saying, well, he was great against Tennessee? He'll just recapture. No, he's going to go into a fucking ditch. You know what I mean?
And that's the inconsistency. It's almost like sometimes he has to hit rock bottom to realize he's a good quarterback, Right. I don't, and maybe he ain't watching the show, Mike, but if he was, maybe he's using it as fuel, that, hey, this is a gift.
He'll see the graphic, I promise you. He'll see it.
There are more, there's Dad will anyway. There are more doubters in this, that's what there is. There's a lot of people doubting you. There's a lot of people looking at, they couldn't believe it was even a question him coming back, when he was thinking about maybe going to the NFL draft,
Right.
He's coming back to improve his stock so he can improve it right out of the gate by beating the shit out of North Carolina, by making a game with Georgia, potentially beating Tennessee Vols.
Yeah.
I mean, we could turn your scenario on the head and then say, he's the third best quarterback, second best quarterback in the SEC, whatever, So the ball's in his court. Nobody else is challenging for that position there in South Carolina. They built that offensive – I mean, that offensive room is built around him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
What other quarterback in the SEC is getting that kind of treatments, you know? So I guarantee when they went to the transfer portal, they were saying, what can help him, you know? And that's the way they built this thing. So a little bit high, I'm a little bit higher just because, again, I have PTSD of that South Carolina game last year, Mike. So I drank a lot of beers for that one. So I'm going to have them a little bit higher, but I get where you're coming from.
And in all fairness, Shane, I had Stetson Bennett 10th on this list last year, so I don't know what I'm talking about anyway. You know?
Seriously.
Well, speaking of the dogs, that's where I got Carson Beck, number 8. And I could see him a lot higher, but he's another one. I can't just give him a ranking just because I think he'll be good.
Yeah.
He's got to go out there and do it in meaningful action. But he's going to have Brock Bowers. He's going to have Dominic Lovett. He's going to have Ladd McConkey. He's got Ra Thomas, Arian Smith. I mean, my God, the O-line should be great, probably the best in the SEC. Running game should be elite. When we have seen him, Shane, 26 of 35, 310 yards, 4 touchdowns last season. So, and Rusty says he's got an NFL arm. And I trust Rusty over anybody when it comes to Georgia. So, I mean, Carson Beck, he could be number 1 by the end of the season. I mean, if Georgia wins it all, that's probably because Carson Beck is the best quarterback in the SEC. And I'm not doubting him.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we just haven't seen enough of him. And this is more of a respect of his team, the weapons, and him. I think he's already run away with the job. I don't know why they haven't named him the starter. I guess they're just not going to hand him anything. He's got to earn it in training camp, which that makes sense. But thoughts on Carson Beck, number 8 overall?
Well, he won't see this, you know, because he's banned from social media, I believe, you know. But I guess, you know, we've already crowned the kid and not seen him in action. So I get why you look at these lists, and a lot of them have Beck higher just because, like what you said, all the ingredients they got around him. You know, they got some of the best pass catchers, pass blockers. You know, you're going to have a crop of running backs that's going to alleviate some of that pressure. You know, Georgia is loaded. But I think, you know, similar to years past, they're not going to have to win because of the arm of Carson Beck. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He just can't blow the game. And I think that's why sometimes – You look at these powerhouse programs, the quarterbacks are brought down the list because of what they got around them. So you move back to Ole Miss, give them Lane Kiffin where they got to sling it out, then you're saying, hey, man, this is 1, 2, 3 quarterback in the country.
Right.
But Georgia, they just don't need him to be that. They need him to just be middle of the road, steady Eddie, don't mess this game up, basically.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, just because we don't have to do this for every quarterback or anything, but Rattler or Beck, you think by the end of this season, if you needed one to win you the game, would you go with Rattler? Would you go with Beck? Who do you think?
Oh man, that's a tough one, Mike.
Because you can see, I mean, I'm not trying to be clickbaity here. I mean, we got 7 more to go. There's some awesome quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I guess I like Beck's arm talent better than I like Spencer's, but Spencer has lived under the spotlight for a long, long time, and that's exactly what this championship game is.
Yeah.
So give me Rattler. Give me a cocky bastard that wants to come out there and sling the rock. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I want in my locker room. That's what I want in my huddle. I don't want a kid that breaks under pressure because, you know, I've heard a lot of people talk. What happens when Georgia Marler was on the other day. What happens when they're a couple scores down? You know, I think that we don't know. I mean, for us to sit here and say, well, don't worry, Beck will figure it out. Will he? You know, some people crack under pressure, you know. And I think, like, the pressure can't get any heavier than it is for Spencer. Right? Like, the pressure's been on for the last 2 years. So I'm going to have him in the championship game.
Okay. All right, number 7 on my list, Shane. And this is another tough one but this should give you an idea of what I think of this guy. And I struggle to put him this low. Like, I feel like he should be higher, but, again, we got a lot of good quarterbacks. Devin Leary from Kentucky. I loved him at NC State.
Yeah.
First, why he's low on this list, first season in the SEC. So we don't truly respect someone until they've done it in the SEC. First season working with Liam Cohen, the offense coordinator, of course. But at NC State, Shane, 60% passer, 6,800 yards, 62 touchdowns, only 16 picks. He's great. Trio of receivers, Dane Key, Barian Brown, Tavian Robinson. Doesn't get much better than that. Again, O-line could kill him. Yeah. And he's been banged up in his career. He's got minus 19 rushing yards for his career. So he's not a runner.
Yeah.
Not a runner. If the O-line's an issue, that's going to be a problem.
Sounds like my stat line.
That's why I put him a little bit further down the list. But I've seen a lot of people put Devin Leary top 3 in the SEC. I'm not ready to go quite that far, but I think he could finish there if the O-line is solid in Lexington.
Yeah, man. I mean, golly. Because Kentucky's crowned him, you know? I mean, I think you'll probably see more Leary jerseys than Will Levis jerseys, you know? I mean, they are all in on this kid. And like you said, you talk about 3 of the most dynamic wide receivers. Now, are they the best, like NFL, you know, like if you're building a wide receiver? No, but they bring something different along. That's what makes them scary dangerous, you know, is this they've all got their own little niche, you know?
Right.
I love this room. I love the running back. I love Ray Davis. I don't know about the offensive line. You know, I think that's the biggest concern for me is because it was such a problem last year. Do you just fix it in one offseason? You know, I know they got a lot of bodies coming in through the portal and stuff like that, but, you know, when you're talking about the big 5 up front, these guys got to work together. They got to know each other, and if one drops the ball, all 4 of them suffer for it, you know. So do they gel that quick? I don't know. You know, they've never worked together. So I understand why you're not so high on him just because the question marks surrounding the program. But I do think that Cohen is going to put this kid in a good position.
Yeah.
And I think Kentucky is going to be vastly improved in the passing game. So I'm a little – I keep putting everybody – so I got to bring somebody down.
Anyone down.
You know? But I don't know. I bought in, and I do this
We
every
got some
July.
great quarterbacks, I'm
Dude,
telling you.
Mike, I'm telling you, every July I do this with Kentucky especially. The closer we get, I'm like, damn, man, you know, they got something. And then something happens week 4, week 5, and you're like, I can't let's just delete that one, you know. But right now, I'm on the Leary train. I'm all aboard, and I think – there's a reason he was the most coveted quarterback in the transfer portal last year.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that fans in Lexington should be excited because I think they got themselves a hell of a quarterback.
I agree. All right, number 6.
I'm trying to think who you got this high.
Shade is not going to like this one, but I keep seeing online, why are you guys so high?
I'm in there beer.
Okay, let me get our waiter out here.
Because I feel some negative coming my way here in a second, Mike.
All right, number 6, Shane. And this is more the system, the coach. I'm a believer in them. Not sold on the quarterback. Be happy to be wrong. Joe Milton, number 6. And again, if I'm saying, look at some of the guys we've passed up so far. So I'm not saying he's awful. 64% passer last year for the Vols, 971 yards, 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. So Orange Bowl MVP, Shane. If he plays like that the whole year, he's probably number 1 on this list, given Josh Heupel and everything. But they're comparing him to Anthony Richardson. I have not done that, but some people are. Tennessee fans I've seen, and they're cheering and they're saying, "Oh, yeah, he'll be the next Anthony Richardson." That's not a good thing, in my opinion. I mean, hell, of course, I was singing Anthony Richardson's praises this time last year, but by the end of the year, not someone you wanted to lead. Hell, they were 6-6. Yeah. If he's the next Anthony Richardson, Tennessee's in trouble. Strongest arm in football, I get it. Yeah. That's one of the last traits I want in a good quarterback. I want accuracy. Yeah. I want toughness. I want leadership. Can he bring those things? I'm not saying he can't. But he's lost multiple starting jobs. Make or break year for him. Reworked offensive line. Reworked receivers. We got confidence in the receivers, but still reworked. So there's reason for me to doubt Joe Milton. What do you think? Number 6.
Do you like Pate? Which camera am I talking to over here? This one? This one? Mike, you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot. I'm turning off this pod now, Mike. The thing with me, brother, is And I get it. There's been the inconsistencies. There's been the overthrows. That's what everybody wants to talk about. And I love the Hop team does exactly what we need them to do. Putting these videos out there, throwing them 85 yards, yes, that's hype, throwing it through the brick wall, that's hype. That's what we want as a Tennessee Volunteer fan. So I'm not overreacting to that, that.
But you kind of are.
A little bit because I love it. I do love it. I love being Tennessee for a long time, man. For 20 years, wasn't in the spotlight, and if it wasn't for a good reason,
Right.
So now people are recognizing the program, and I think it's starting to come to fruition. And a lot of that has to do with Heupel and his system. But when I look at Milton, I look at him in the Vanderbilt game, I look at him in Clemson. This is the two games I'm going off of. This is what our quarterback's going to look like. And especially that second one in Clemson, he was dialed in, man.
Yeah.
Was there a couple of overthrows? Yeah, but there was also a lot of very, very dimes. I'm telling the absolute dimes in the back of the end zone. I think Joe gave me confidence going into the season that he can handle the pressure and that he can handle. Now, one thing I didn't see in the Vanderbilt game, and I really haven't seen up to this point, is physical play. He's a big bastard, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. The guy's a giant. He looks like a tight end. He has the body and frame to get some more yards, and I'm kind of surprised they haven't utilized that. But why would they when they don't have any backups for him last year? I think now we've got backups.
Right.
So I'd like to see, because that was one of the – thank you. Mike's talking about all these Tennessee negative stuff. I need another one of these guys. I'm gonna bring it in here, Mike. What I'm saying. Cheers, by the way.
Yeah.
Joe Milton has got the arm, and he's got the ability to just blow the doors off this program, man. He truly does. There's weapons. There's some speed. There's some great wide receivers. There are question marks at offensive line. I get that, but when you're looking at one of the best quarterbacks in the country, I'm putting him in the list just because he does have those, ingredients. Now, does he put it together? Does he have the overthrows? I don't know, but I'm not getting in his head. He better not be listening to this pod, because I'm going to say positively he's dialed in, and when we look at the end of the season, he's going to be breaking records, and he's going to be at least a top 3 quarterback in the SEC.
Yeah, I hear a lot of potential in everything you just said. That's kind of the theme with Joe Milton, potential. You know what a wise coach Jimbo Fisher once said?
What'd he say?
Potential. I hate that word because it means you ain't done it yet. And he ain't done it yet. Now, he did it against Clemson, and that's why he's on this list. That's why he's so high up on this list, because I got respect for Clemson, their defense at least. But, yeah, I think he can do it. I think he can. But if I was convinced, Shane, he'd be a lot higher on this list. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I got 1 foot in, 1 foot out on Joe Milton right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
Okay, what programs are we not alienating today, Mike?
All right, how about this one, Shane? This will.
What are we at? What number are we at?
Number 5. So we're in the top 5.
Okay, top 5. Here on out, I think if you made the top 5 in the SEC, you're happy.
Yeah.
You'd love to be number 1, but you'll handle the top 5. So who we got number 5?
Now, this will surprise a lot of people, Shane, and this is projection. We saw a little bit of him last year. New offensive coordinator, but I'm going Connor Wigman, Texas A&M. If Jimbo was still our play caller, I'm bumping Connor way down the list. But I'm a big believer in Bobby Petrino, believer in just him having to call the plays. I think we got the best trio of receivers here: Anaya Smith, Moose Muhammad, Evan Stewart, elite. Everyone's back on the O-line.
Yeah,
just signed a 5-star running back. Against Ole Miss, his first career start, Shane, 63% passer, 338 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. The last time we saw him started, he beat LSU. I think they were top 5 LSU. So, he flashed it. Not even convinced he's going to be the starting quarterback. Because he's got beat out Max Johnson. So maybe I'd put him a little bit higher if I knew for a fact he'd be the starter. But I got 90% confidence he's going to be our starting quarterback. I think A&M, big bounce back year, and it's going to be largely due to Connor Wigman taking that next step. He was true freshman last year, so second year in college football. I like Connor Wigman, number 5.
Golly, how bad do you want to talk to Billy Lucci? You're moving him up this list. Connor, say what you want. Connor was the quarterback last year, and they still did not make a bowl game. They still
Well, only for a couple games, though.
I know. I'm not saying it's the perfect scenario, but
Right.
But I mean, you got to factor that in. I mean, if you're making him a top 5 quarterback, I get it. They got weapons. They got probably the best receiving room in the country.
This is mostly about Bobby Petrino, though, Shane. Coming in, being the coordinator, quarterback's coach, get Jimbo away from Connor Wigman.
How can you be so optimistic about Connor Wigman and his future because of a coach hire, but you can't be as optimistic about Cohen in Kentucky or Spencer taking that step forward in South Carolina or Milton figuring it out? Now, again, I know that the people – you're golly, Mike. I feel like I'm on Paul Feinbaum's show now, you know. Like, I understand why he does it. Let's get a caller in, you know. But I'm just curious, you know. So in your mind, you're thinking the stars align. Bobby Petrino just he's the guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's cut loose down there in College Station. And I like here's the thing. I like Texas A&M. I put them at number 1 last year. They broke my heart. I'm still high on them this season. Hell, just listen to our preview. I fell in love with them. But does he let Bobby Petrino have that baby? Does he allow him to just have full reins and full control of that offense? If he does, yes, I think we're looking back saying Connor's a top 3 quarterback in the country, you know. But is there a part of you that gives a little pause with the Max Johnson competition, or is there a pause saying, hey, well, Jimbo didn't let loose last year, why would he do it this year?
Well, because I think his ass is on the line.
Yeah, he's got to.
And I think Max Johnson's a very good quarterback. I've been very high on him his entire career. He kind of – you can't say he saved the season because they still had a bad season, but he came in and won them. I believe it was a Miami game, Arkansas game. So it would have been – I mean, he may already be fired if not for Max Johnson.
Yeah.
So Max Johnson's a good quarterback. I don't think you can win the SEC with Max Johnson. I think you can if 5-star Wigman takes that second-level step in his second year in college football. I just think A&M's got all the pieces, Shane.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm just going to keep saying that year after year after year until they actually do it. And if they don't do it, fire Jimbo's ass. I think they probably should have already fired his ass. But this has got to be the final year. If they don't go 9-3 or better, what in the hell are we doing here?
Yeah.
We got a top 5 roster potentially. We got, you know, maybe the most accomplished offensive coordinator in the country.
Yeah.
We got all these defensive linemen. We got our secondary's elite. I don't know. I think A&M is bound to have a huge year.
And I'm not trying to piss off, you know, Texas A&M here, but if Lane Kiffin was their coach last year, what was their record?
Probably like 11-2.
Shit.
Jimbo is not.
I know,
great, you know?
not a Jimbo fan. He's definitely not coming by our booth at SEC Media Days. He may flip us off on the way through. Hey, listen, but that's the thing, man. We're not hard on Jimbo.
Right.
Well, maybe we are, but it's because we expect more, just like that fan base should expect more. When you look at that roster, there's a lot of people, a lot of coaches that would kill for that roster, that would kill for that NIL money, that would kill for that facility. You know, it's set up perfect, and you had a head start on Texas, which is about to come in here. You know, and I think, you know, now's the time to put up or shut up. So they're not waiting anymore. Aggies got to get it done this year, and I'm with you here, man. I'm giving you a hard time. But I like
what they did at LSU last year, winning the West.
Yeah.
In year 1.
Yeah.
Jimbo's going into year 6. It's a fucking disgrace.
It is.
If he can't win the West.
Yeah.
In 6-7 years, well, we got other people doing it immediately.
And if I told you've beat Alabama a few times, you know what I'm saying?
Come on now.
Come on.
All right, number 4. And again, people will probably get mad at this, Shane. They'll probably think their fans will think too low. Others will think too high. But Will Rogers, number 4, I think he's being completely overlooked. New system, which I think will be good for him. I think it'll be good for the offense, a little bit more balanced.
Yeah.
He's not going to put up the crazy numbers, so that'll hurt him a little bit in some people's mind, but I think he could be a better quarterback and not have as good as numbers, as crazy as that is to say, because they're going to run the ball more, push the ball down the field a little bit more. He's already, Shane, the all-time leading passer in Mississippi State history. He's already the all-time SEC completion leader,
Yeah.
and he could play for 2 more years. I don't know if he will, but he could. Nearly 4,000 yards,
He
35
could play
touchdowns.
for 2 more years?
Well, because of the COVID, he played. That was his debut, and that was essentially a free year for everybody. So he can shatter every record that exists in the SEC if he so chooses. But I think this move will be good for him to try something different. The only hesitation is the fact that they brought in Mike Wright, and maybe they're bringing him in. I think really what they're bringing him in to be like a wildcat.
Yeah.
To maybe be, I don't know, tight end's the right word, but like H-back, receiver, do many different things. But the fact they brought him in is kind of concerning that, maybe they just need an emergency quarterback too. You know what I mean? But I think Will's the man. I think he is criminally underrated.
Yeah.
Number 4 may even be underrated. But I think Will Rogers is a top 5 quarterback in the SEC.
What about the turnover in the receiver room? Are you worried about that at all?
That hurts too. I mean, Ra Thomas, if he was back, that'd be great. Ducking. I remember we mentioned him during the preview. I don't know exactly. Someone said in the comments that I think he's like out of eligibility or something. That's why he went in the portal. But yeah, so there's turnover there. They're relying on Tulu Griffin and Xavier Thomas, 2 younger players, and then Rufus Harvey, who sounds like he maybe got injured and had to enter the transfer portal. So massive turnover in the receiver room. That played a part of my decision as well.
And I love Will Rogers. I think he is an unsung hero of the SEC quarterbacks. And you talk about a guy that's got a ton of experience. That he's not, I mean, there's no game that's too big for him. So
yeah,
going back to that scenario of this show is if I'm going to a championship game, I want a guy that has done it before. Maybe not been in an SEC championship, but, has been in some high-pressure ball games and come out victorious. So I like Will Rogers, and I love what they're going to do. I think, whether they do it or not, when Arnett's coming out saying, hey, we're going to let him cook, man. We're going to let him just go out there and ball out. That excites me because you felt like he was already doing it to begin with. What does it look like, with 40-yard bombs down the field, So
yeah.
I don't know. I think this next chapter of Mississippi State football is going to be awesome to watch. And then 10 years from now, we're going to be talking about some of the all-time greats that have come through this conference. Will Rogers' name's going to keep coming up when we bring up Mississippi State, in my opinion.
Now here, Shane, this is the part where people do not read the fine print. They don't understand this list. How in the hell do you got this guy, number 3, over such and such, Spencer Rattler, Joe Milton, end of the season project? So this is the guy that's probably the most projected on the entire list. Number 3, Jackson Dart, Ole Miss. I think he takes a big step. Year 2, playing for Lane Kiffin. We all know what he's got in Judkins, maybe the best running back in the country. Got that pressure off him. A lot back on the offensive line. Receivers are retooled. They had to hit the transfer portal to get them back. But he's won over the team. Nearly 3,000 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, 11 picks. He's got to clean that up. 614 rushing yards. Only threw 1 interception in all of spring. And that's practice, scrimmages, everything. I mean, by all accounts, he's the man in Oxford. If you're the man in the Lane Kiffin, I think you're going to put up some big-time numbers this fall.
Well, what excites me about Jackson Dart is when I think about Lane Kiffin and Bama, when you really could not – like, going back to Matt Corral, you knew it was going to be an air raid type scenario, that they're going to just air it out like crazy. Mm-hmm. But – now they got this running game established, last season. And I think that's what a lot of people forget or not paying attention to is that you can't afford to have 6 guys in the box or you're going to get just diced up by maybe a potential Heisman candidate back there. Mm-hmm. So with a loaded box, now you got Jackson Dart with his wheels able to move around and play action. I think that's what makes them so exciting this season. And everything I've heard sounds great.
Yeah.
I think if we watched a bad spring game or if we heard, rumors that there truly is a quarterback competition, we're not hearing that. This is Jackson's room. It doesn't matter how many quarterbacks Lane Kiffin brought in. Jackson beat them all out. And if he continues that trajectory, we know he has the tangible pieces to be a fantastic quarterback in this conference. With Lane Kiffin as your coach, yeah, the ceiling's unlimited here. I think this is. I may not have him at the 3 spot. I think that's really high, but I would have him with a higher ceiling and potential to be one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the country
Right.
if he takes a hold of this potential. So that's my only draw, is because he didn't do that last year. There were some games they lost because of inconsistent play. Does he fix that in one off season?
Right. Over 600 rushing yards, too. So underrated runner. But the feeling in Oxford, Shane, is that he's going to go to the NFL. So, I mean, they're thinking he's going to be that caliber this fall.
Mike thinks he's top 3. He better be going to the NFL. You know what I'm saying? Because you done passed a whole bunch of NFL quarterbacks.
All right, number 2. This was tough. 1 and 2 was very, very difficult, Shane. But I don't think I surprised anyone in this show. Jaden Daniels, LSU. Year 2 at LSU. Year 2 under Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator. 2-time SEC Offensive Player of the Week last year. 3 games where he scored 4 or more touchdowns. I mean, he was a touchdown machine. Led LSU in rushing. I mean, this guy's dynamic, criminally underrated passer. He broke the LSU rushing record, 11 rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. That's never been done. I mean, I think he's a legit Heisman candidate, especially if LSU is as good as I think they're going to be. I'm already on record.
Yeah.
I think they win it all. He's going to be a Heisman finalist if they live up to that potential.
Mike, and he's just a build of a typical Heisman quarterback. You know what I'm saying? He not only can throw, not only can make great decisions when he's out there on the field, but he's got those legs, man. That mobility factor that you just can't box this kid in. And I think for me, why I've got him high on this list is a lot to do with the spring game. I mean, I was expecting a little bit of a drop, a little bit of rustiness, All the spring games I watched, nobody was more dialed in than Jaden Daniels, So I think that's exciting. We need some receivers to step up. We need some dudes on the outside, but LSU has made a lot of improvement going into this season, mainly with that offensive line, and I thought that was what's the true highlight of the spring game. And if you got 5 big uglies up front keeping you clean in the entire game, you can be able you can have some fun back there, and I think that's what Jaden does this year. So big season for LSU.
So we didn't mention, of course, KJ. Give me KJ.
Golly, how's he not sponsoring this show with all that NIL, How many times we got to say we love KJ Jefferson? And before you jump into this, a lot of people are freaking out that he's even considered the top quarterback, and we've got him on top of our list. If you take KJ's jersey off now and you put a Georgia jersey on him, you put an Alabama jersey on him, there's no question who the Heisman front runner is going to be.
Yeah.
That's this scenario, Mike. I'm going to that locker room, I'm picking a guy, and I'm glad you put KJ there because I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Check this out, Shane. Ranked number 2 in the SEC last year, 8.8 yards per attempt. This is not rushing. This is attempt. He had better passing efficiency, yards per attempt, and completion percentage better than Bryce Young last year. They just don't talk about him. And 510 rushing yards, 7 touchdowns. I mean, he's just a beast. And when he takes off running, you can't bring him down. I mean, it takes 3 or 4 guys just to get him to the ground.
Yeah.
And I think you said it best. I mean, Arkansas fans know all too well the disrespect they get. It's the jersey.
Yeah.
It's the jersey that people downgrade him and, Arkansas lost X amount of games and they lost to Liberty. That was a game he shouldn't even been playing. He was banged up. He missed Mississippi State game. I mean, on and on and on. They would not have made a bowl game the last couple of years if not for KJ Jefferson. I mean, he is that valuable to that team, and I'm fascinated to see the only concern I have is Dan, and I like Dan Enos, so it's not a concern, but it's just he's played under Kendall Browse' entire college career. How does he transition to Dan Enos? But that's the guy that got his hands on Jalen Hurts, turned him into an NFL star. Well, NFL draft pick.
Right.
Jalen Hurts did the work in the NFL.
Yeah.
But, you got to – he has proven he can take a guy that most people see as just a runner and fine-tune the passing. And not that he even needs to do it with KJ, but just different scheme, different things of asking a quarterback to do. How does he transition? I'm curious to see. But I think that could unlock even more in KJ Jefferson this fall, and I certainly anticipate it.
And sometimes I think that's good, Mike. You know, Enos can come in with no, because sometimes if you're a coordinator, I've noticed this, you try to fit your pieces into your molds. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work, you go out and you recruit somebody that comes in and stuff like that. Coming into this system, I think as an outsider, he can sit back and say, okay, what is KJ really good at? That's what we're going to hone in on. You know, what does he struggle at? Okay, maybe we pull back from that a little bit. I think a new, I don't know, kind of like a breath of fresh air is what this is going to feel like for KJ and company. I think Arkansas's offense shines this season, man, and a lot of that is going to do with, me and you agree, the best quarterback in the conference.
Yeah. So, man, I can't wait to see the people reaction. And, I mean,
I'm going to mute them, every one of them.
But I do appreciate you, brother, coming over and
Yeah.
talking SEC quarterbacks. This is always one of my favorite shows of the year. You know what?
Absolutely. If you're really mad, we're going to be at the Bearded Iris on July 15th?
July 15th.
1 to 3 Central.
No, 3 to 6
shit.
Central time.
I'm going to be there early. I'm going to be drinking.
Right near Top Golf. We'll put 101 Van Buren Street, Nashville, Tennessee, 37208. Bearded Iris Brewing, Saturday, July 15th, 3 to 6 p.m. Central Time. Come hang out, drink a cold one, and rip apart my list here. I'm happy to do it.
That's right. Let's drink some cold beer and have fun.
All right.